What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of the Sports Betting Edge podcast presented by OddsJam.com. I am your host, Anthony Servino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at OddsJam. You can find us on all of the top social media and podcast platforms. And with me today, the first ever guest on the Sports Betting Edge podcast presented by OddsJam, one of OddsJam's own, Randall Knack, at Randall K Bets on Twitter. Randall, what's going on?
Hey, not a lot. I appreciate you having me on the show and looking forward to talking about some sports betting, NFL, and whatever else you've got to talk about.
Now, before we get into NFL Week 7, we're going to talk about some plus EV betting opportunities using the tools over at OddsJam. Randall, you're one of the more successful. I mean, I've had some success with OddsJam. I myself made over $3,000 so far in roughly, and I started right before week 1 of the NFL season. You have had a hell of a lot more success than me. Guys, Randall here is more proof about how powerful these tools are. Randall has made roughly $15,000 using the terrific tools at OddsJam.
Yeah, it's a great website, a great product. There, is the ability to find the discrepancies in the line. You've got the plus EV page that you mentioned. And actually one of my favorites is probably the low holds page, where I've been able to turn quite a bit of profit with those, taking those free bets and converting them to free cash. And, the low holds page is definitely a page where, any of those free bets you get, look at that low holds page and, you can convert them to, like I said, free cash to help build your bankroll.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like, I've been in the fantasy industry for a while, but I've always sports bet. Like, even before it was illegal in the United States, like, we all had offshore accounts with bettors and all these other offshore betting, sports books. But OddsJam really has completely changed my outlook on my strategy of sports betting.
Yeah, it's totally changed mine as well. And, I've been a handicapper for many years, and I've got a lot of models and systems that I use, that are related to the NFL and college football and, college basketball, especially. I've got a model that, is very successful, and I'm looking forward to seeing, what OddsJam has, from the positive EV page, when that season starts with college basketball. And yeah, like you said, there's so many tools on this page. It's absolutely a game changer, for beginning bettors, as well as, bettors like ourselves who have been around for a while, and have had success, to be able to, use the tools to continue to find edges and, just continue to have success across the board.
Now, let's get into some of these betting opportunities. Let's get into NFL Week 7. There was one earlier that I took on Jalen Hurts' his rushing yard total was I believe was at 42.5. It was over right around a 10% potential profit margin, and Jalen Hurts had over 42.5 rushing yards, I think, in all but one game this year. That was one I had to jump all over.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a game this week. When you look at that line, I believe, the Raiders are laying 3 in that spot. That line just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The Raiders are coming off of the win against the Broncos, where they obviously got rid of Gruden the week before. Somewhat of a surprise the way that they played in that game against the Broncos, although one of my favorite angles in the NFL is the fired coach angle. I felt that this was a little bit different just because, of the way he left. But I think that this line is very telling. I like the Eagles in this spot, and I think for, the Eagles to win, I think Hurts is going to have a big game. Through the air and on the ground. I mean, I think this Philly defense is somewhat underrated. And I think that they can hold, the Raiders, to some shorter drives in this game. And I think that Hurts can definitely extend plays. He's shown the ability to do that, this year and throughout his career in college and both the NFL. So, yeah, I think that that's a solid play on on Hurts over his rushing total this week.
He's all they really have in Philadelphia. And there were some rumors on national media that, maybe the Eagles want to look at Joe Flacco. Maybe, they traded for Gardner Minshew. This is not Jalen Hurts' fault. Howie Roseman has missed the ball managing veteran contracts, like they were stuck with Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and a couple of other, older players on both sides of the ball since the Super Bowl year. They missed, I don't know, it's early, but Jalen Reagor looks like a miss, a first-round wide receiver. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, they just traded away Zach Ertz, so it's not like Jalen Hurts is working with, Tom Brady's arsenal or Dak Prescott's arsenal, and really, Jalen Hurts has been keeping the Eagles afloat and in games the best he could. And like I said, all but one, actually 2 games, he missed the 42.5. One of them was he only had 35 yards against Dallas, but that was a game where you had to throw all over the place. Dallas controlled that game. And the other one was against Carolina in a game where neither offense showed up. But even last week against Tampa Bay, one of the better run defenses in the NFL, 10 carries, 44 yards. He's had 7+ carries in every game this season. So that over is one of the safer player prop EV bets that you can get. Let's move into another one. Here's one for tonight for anybody catching this feed live. There's a 7.59% return plus EV wager on the total passing touchdowns of Case Keenum over 1.5. And as great as this is, I also like to tell people ones that I'm afraid to make, even though the numbers are, and math works itself out in the end. Case Keenum throwing over 1.5 touchdown passes. This is a plus EV bet. As good as it is, you can get this at plus 170 at Fox Bet. I'm fading this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a player prop that I would be looking to bet in this point. At this point, I think this is a very low scoring game. Case Keenum is a great game manager, but again, I think that this is a very low scoring game. I could see a lot of field goals being kicked in this game, and he may throw one touchdown. Obviously they're thin at the running back position, which may lead to him throwing the ball more. But I'm with you on this one. I would have to lean to the under 1.5 passing touchdowns in this game. It just seems like in the NFL when you get a backup quarterback, in a game that maybe they're not expected to play, or they're thrown in last minute, which obviously hasn't been the case here, but. You see them struggle, but yeah, I'm with you here. I like the under 1.5 touchdowns if I were looking to bet this, although the value is definitely on the over 1.5.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Case Keenum, he had his most successful season, or one of them, playing in Minnesota when Stefanski was his quarterback's coach. And Case Keenum, this is also a revenge game against Denver. But, with Odell Beckham Jr., I don't even know if he's going to play. I got to see if the inactive list came out. They might be getting Jarvis Landry back, but there's so many injuries. Even their bookend right tackle, he's not going to play tonight. Von Miller lines up on that side. So Case Keenum's going to see a lot of his old teammate in his face. So that's one I'm going to fade, even though the return is really nice on that one.
Yeah, you make a great point. The offensive line, with the tackle being out, and I could see him potentially. I'd almost maybe make a case for the over 1.5 interceptions thrown. I don't know if that's a bet you can make, but and I don't know what the expected value would be on that, but I could see. I would lean more toward him turning the ball over 2 times, before I would throw in 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, both of these defenses, by the way, total yards wise, Cleveland is number 2 in fewest total yards allowed. Denver's 4th in fewest total yards allowed. Denver 4th in fewest points. But here's why I give Denver the edge a little bit more. Despite the fact that Cleveland's giving up the 2nd fewest total yards, they're giving up the 22nd most points. So points per game wise, Denver 18.3, Cleveland 25.2.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I haven't heard and I haven't looked to see if Teddy Bridgewater is going. I think he's an excellent game manager, and, not that they want to keep the Browns offense off of the field, but I think they'll definitely do that. And you bring a good point up with the numbers as far as Denver goes. This line opened, Cleveland -5. Obviously we've had the injuries that you've talked about, and it's all the way down to 1.5. I've never been a fan of betting Thursday night games. Typically, for whatever reason, I just don't do very well on them. But yeah, I think Denver, would have to be the play in this spot at this point for sure.
Now, the inactives did come out. Surprisingly, Odell Beckham Jr., despite the shoulder, he is going to play tonight. But Baker, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Jack Conklin, their guard, Froholt, the defensive end, Ojinobo, and cornerback A.J. Green. They're all inactive, the Cleveland Browns. And it does look like, I believe, Teddy Bridgewater is up.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Browns this year. Odell is obviously starting, like you mentioned, but they've had a lot of success running the ball, in these games. So it'll be interesting to see, where they go with the rushing attack, without Chubb. Just to see kind of the game plan. If they open it up for Keenum, you mentioned the connection there with Stefanski. I just think that there's a lot of unknowns on the Browns side, and I think that the Broncos obviously have their share of injuries, but I think that there's a lot more known with the Broncos coming into this game, as compared to the Browns. So, like I said, Broncos are pass here for me.
Now, let's go to another Sunday game, and it is a 5.13% return plus EV bet. It's on the under Patrick Mahomes interception total. Normally, you think, oh, it's Mahomes, this is a lock. It's not quite a lock. He's thrown at least one interception in every game since week 1. He's thrown 2 interceptions 3 different times, and now he gets the Tennessee Titans this week. Really good matchup throwing, but this is a plus EV bet, despite the fact that that the trend is saying that this is going to go over. I would take it. It's a high enough percent that that it's worth the risk. It's -125 odds at DraftKings and Caesars. Pinnacle, the sharpest sports book in the world, has this at -166. This is an extremely profitable bet on the under. And Patrick Mahomes, like, he is eventually not going to throw another interception.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I really like Mahomes under a half here. This Titans defense has not been great this year. They got a little bit better after that first week against, I guess after the first 2 weeks against the Cardinals and the Seahawks, and they held Wentz in check, I guess, if you will. But over time, or throughout history, I guess here in the recent years, the Titans have somewhat owned the Chiefs. But I still think that this Chiefs team gets going, and I really could see a spot here where the Chiefs get out to an early lead, and Mahomes has a monster, let's say first half or first 3 quarters maybe, where he doesn't have to throw the ball all over the place, and they can kind of somewhat manage the game. So yeah, I definitely like the under a half here, although his interception against Washington last week was one that was pretty embarrassing. And I saw a tweet earlier this week where when that popped up in the film room, the Kansas City Chiefs players got a good chuckle out of it. So, if he can avoid any throws like he had against Washington where he kind of tossed that one up, I would agree with you here that the under a half is a solid play.
I feel like something's wrong with the Chiefs. Like, they even in their week one, like, they don't look like themselves. I don't know what it is, but they better figure it out quick, because they're no longer the de facto #1 team in the AFC. But back to the prop before we move off of it, the Tennessee Titans, they're not extremely opportunistic. They have the 7th fewest takeaways in the NFL. They have 5 total takeaways, when a team like the #1 team, the Buffalo Bills, has 16. So again, This is a bottom team in terms of takeaways. So the odds, the probability of this bet hitting, I would say, is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And another point to bring up about the Titans. I mean, the Titans obviously have Derrick Henry, and they love to run the ball. I still think that this Chiefs offense is explosive. I mean, like you said, it's not something looks wrong with Mahomes. I'm not sure what it is, but this is a game too where say they don't, the Chiefs don't get out to an early lead, and maybe the Titans want to sort of play keep away or try to manage the game to keep this Chiefs offense, off the field as much as they can. I mean, I've got to think at some point they wake up this year, and the Titans may not be the one that want to poke the bear heading into this game, if you will. So you may see a heavy dose of the run game and a little bit more game management out of the Titans,
as we should with Derrick Henry.
Absolutely, 100%.
Here's another interception prop, 4.64%er. Using the OddsJam plus EV tool, and it's on Tua. Like, is there a prop if Tua's going to be traded by the end of the week? Let's start there. I'm sure you've heard the rumor, Randall, that Tua could be on the move as part of a 3-way Deshaun Watson trade.
Yeah, that's very interesting, that rumor for sure. We don't know what is going to happen with Watson this year. I think that's still all up in the air. I mean, this incident happened, back in March, or I guess it came out in March. And, we're getting ready to head into November, and we still don't have an answer on, if he's going to play. But I'm probably one of the biggest haters or non-believers in Tua.
Me too.
I've never been a fan of him. And, I mean, this Falcons defense, though, I mean, I don't know that, they're ball hawks to say, but Tua makes a lot of throws that are just not very smart. The one that he had, I believe it was last week against the Colts, I mean, he underthrew that guy by a good 10 or 15 yards. I mean, that ball wasn't even close, and I think he makes some wrong reads, and he's not a very accurate thrower of the deep ball. And if they try to take shots deep, obviously that opens the door up to interceptions. And yeah, I would have to go with the over a half interceptions in this one, which, Pinnacle has this minus 127 and DraftKings has this plus 100. So yeah, I'd be looking at the over a half interception if I were betting on this prop.
Here's another one. It's a Jared Goff revenge game prop. Jared Goff, and it's also obviously a Matthew Stafford revenge game. But the Jared Goff, it's the over/under on his touchdown total. And the profitable bet is on the under 1.5, minus 130 at Caesars, minus 172 at Pinnacle. Jared Goff just has nothing to work with. And as much as people want to blame Jared Goff, like when you take him away from all of those weapons he had and you put him in Detroit, where his best weapon is his tight end, and TJ Hockenson is a very good tight end, and DeAndre Swift, one of the better pass-catching running backs in the NFL, you have nothing at wide receiver, and people want to throw shade at Jared Goff. But which way do you like? Because despite the revenge game, the Rams secondary isn't what it was last year. Two of the players they lost in their secondary are playing with the Cleveland Browns tonight in John Johnson and Troy Hill. And Darius Williams, the corner opposite Jalen Ramsey, he's on the injured reserve list. So this could be a sneaky over, but this should be a game where the Rams should suffocate Jared Goff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think that, the over, could have some value. I will say I'm a fan of backing teams that are shut out the previous week so far this year, 3-0 against the spread, the following week after a shutout, and actually 12-3 since 2018. I was very glad to see the Lions get on the board in this game last week that they had against the Bengals. I'm not a big fan of Dan Campbell. I just think that, anybody who shows up in a racing helmet is doing up downs with his players. I don't know that the players respect him to the level that, they maybe should, or that you would look for players to have respect towards the head coach. But, this is a revenge game, and I've got to think that Jared Goff, doesn't feel wanted by the Rams, or, feels like he wasn't wanted by the Rams. And, I don't know, like you said, the Lions do not have, a star receiver. The Rams secondary is not what it is. I mean, I could see, I could potentially see, a touchdown or two to Hockinson. That seems to kind of be his go-to guy, although he hasn't had a great last couple of weeks. But yeah, this one's tough. It's going to be a very interesting game, and the Rams I think are laying 15 in this one, so it's a high number, especially for a revenge game. But man, I think it's a little bit warranted. This Lions team is atrocious. Although they are number one, or at least a couple weeks ago they were number one in third down stops, but that stat's a little bit misleading given the fact that they're giving up first downs, on every first and second down, and teams aren't actually getting to the third down. So
yeah, there were 3 games this year in which Jared Goff passed for over 2 touchdowns, and there are 3 games where he's passed for 0, including each of the past 2 weeks passing for 0 touchdown. So I do think he'll throw for at least 1 this week, but I would feel safe taking the under here. Again, it's also profitable. It can go either way, but like, who the hell is he throwing the football to?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And McVay, of anybody, definitely knows his weaknesses. So, that could be something that could benefit, the under. Again, this is probably, another one of those props where if it was flipped, I might be more inclined for Goff to throw a couple of picks.
Now, let's stay in this game, and you mentioned TJ Hockenson, and TJ Hockenson has been quiet on a fantasy realm, really disappointing a lot of his fantasy managers. TJ Hockenson fewer, he actually came back to life a little bit last week, but he had 3 straight games with fewer than 8 PPR points. His reception total over under 4.5. The profitable side is on the over for TJ Hockenson's total receptions, minus 130 at Caesars, minus 167 at Pinnacle, and again, over 4.5. In the past, last week he hit it, but again, during that 3-game stretch, fewer than 4 receptions, and he gets a Rams defense that you can exploit them in their secondary. So I would take the over here on TJ Hockenson. He has been getting the targets, 4 games this year, over 8 targets, including 11 last week.
Yeah, I would be all over the over in this particular play. My fantasy model really likes Hockenson this week to have a big game. You've got a total here of 50.5, depending on, where you're shopping. And, you can get over 4.5 here, minus 130. This is obviously going to be a game, that is probably a game where the Lions are trailing. So they're going to have to pass the ball. So yeah, I mean, I would look to take the over here. Unfortunately, here in Illinois, our Caesars is much different than the one that you have in New Jersey, but I'll just go ahead and say this will be my official prop play of the week, over 4.5 on Hockenson. If you can get on that on Caesars, minus 130, I really like that a lot.
Now, our next one, we talked about Derrick Henry a little bit, how, maybe you slow the Chiefs down by featuring Derrick Henry a little bit more than usual. This guy gets, all the touches in the world, but something we're seeing differently this year compared to most years. He's actively involved in the passing game, so his pass catching total prop, the total receptions over under 2.5. The profitable side is on the under. You can get plus 105 odds across the board at DraftKings, Caesars, Borgata, BetMGM, minus 117 at Pinnacle. Now, we have had 3 straight games in which Henry would have hit the under here. 2 receptions against the Jets, 0 against Jacksonville, 2 last Monday night against Buffalo in that win. And now he gets the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm taking the under here. I know Henry had over 3 receptions to start the year, but now they're starting to give Henry the ball more on the ground, which is where they should be giving him the ball more.
Yeah, I like the under here as well. And, I mentioned earlier that this game, could potentially get out of hand, if the Chiefs can get out to a lead. And, I mean, that'll lead to the Titans passing the ball, but I don't necessarily believe it leads to them dumping the ball off and letting Henry go. So, if they do control the game, you're going to see a lot of running out of Henry. And, yeah, I think the under 2.5, at plus 105 on the books that you mentioned is definitely a solid play. For total receptions. I think that they're going to have to control this game on the ground if they want to have a chance to win.
Now, how do you like touchdown props? I know that there's no touchdown props that I've ever seen at OddsJam, but this is a betting show, and there's one touchdown scorer prop that I really like. It's the anytime touchdown for Anthony Firkser. And Anthony Firkser hasn't really done a lot this year. One of the bigger disappointments in fantasy football if you punt the tight end and go for a late one. But in his career, Firkser has played the Chiefs twice. He scored in both games, and the Chiefs have one of the worst defenses in defending the tight end. I think this is a game where Firkser's due. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season. I think he gets on the board for at least one, and I might even take the 2-touchdown prop just for the hell of it.
Yeah, and as you were running through all of that information, I was looking up my fantasy model and just wanting to see what it had for him this week. And yeah, I mean, this week, for all the reasons that you mentioned, the Chiefs, struggle against the tight end. And, with the fantasy model that I have, it's probably better at, predicting anytime touchdown scores just based on, what I've seen throughout the years. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what he is to have a touchdown this week. I would say that there's some really good value on that, from a betting number. So yeah, I like him to score a touchdown. I may have to bet that one with you as well.
Yeah, Chiefs have given up a league-high 6 touchdowns. They're tied with the team that you would never think is up there with touchdowns to the tight end. It's actually the Buffalo Bills. For as shutdown as that defense can be, the Bills have given up 6 tight end touchdowns this year, too. They're on a bye, but keep that in mind for any tight end playing them moving forward, that you can beat this team, in the red zone with the tight end. But, back to Kansas City. Let's go to fantasy. Let's go to touchdowns allowed to the tight end. I just want to double check who has scored against them. It looks like Ricky Seals-Jones, Dawson Knox, Dallas Goedert, and I see 3. They've given up 6, so that means there's probably a couple rushing touchdowns that I'm missing that aren't here.
Yeah, I mean, in this, this Chiefs defense has definitely given up a lot of yards and touchdowns through these weeks, especially here early on. They've been in some shootouts. Back to your point on the tight end. I mean, I think he has a lot of value this week. Especially Henry can get him down into the red zone. And that opens up a lot of potential targets for him.
Actually, I was looking at touchdowns scored by the tight end. The Chiefs have actually given up only, I believe, where am I with the Chiefs? I was looking at the wrong side of things. They are giving up the 28th most fantasy points, because you can blend fantasy and sports betting a lot, especially with the props and how accurate these lines can be.
Absolutely.
But the Texans and Chargers have each given up, and the Eagles have each given up 5 touchdowns, the tight ends. So, like here, if you want to, another sneaky tight end touchdown prop play, Zach Ertz. It's not really sneaky, but it's his debut game with the Cardinals. And the Texans, you can pretty much start any tight end against them, and you're going to get production fantasy-wise. I like Zach Ertz to score at least 1 touchdown this week.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, just another weapon for Kyler Murray. And, I mean, you've obviously seen kind of a rebirth or a resurgence of A.J. Green in his career out there. But, I think Ertz could definitely, be a look for Kyler in this game. And yeah, you mentioned Houston. They're a terrible football team. And, I guess my only concern there would be, Arizona gets out to an early lead and, they look to just kind of get in and get out, I guess, if you will, without many injuries. But yeah, I could see Ertz having a solid game in that one as well.
Do you see any form of a trap game here for Arizona?
Man, I've tried to make a case for it. Any team that's undefeated, I'm always looking to find, that spot. Who does Arizona have next week after this Texans game? Let's see here if I can pull that up. Yeah, so they play the Cardinals next week. So, it could be.
They play Packers, you mean?
Yeah, Packers, I'm sorry. So, Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals have the Packers next Thursday night. This is a spot here where they may be looking past Houston, although, Buffalo was in a very similar spot a couple of weeks ago where they had Kansas City on deck, and, I mean, they blew right through Houston.
Yeah.
Um,
But
maybe.
Josh Allen and this they've been there before, right? Like Cardinals really
Yeah.
haven't been here in a while. Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray. I mean, there's a slight case. I don't know if I would. I don't think I'd bet on it.
Well, and another, to kind of switch gears to a handicapping perspective. I mean, this is your 4:25 Eastern game. I mean, you've got to imagine that the Cardinals are going to be in every money line parlay. I'm not sure about teasers, but this is that late game window where, some crazy things happen. And man, I mean, with the Packers on deck, Texans are a hard team to take. For sure. But I mean, that's a lot of points, like you said, for a Cardinals team that, has never really been here before. I mean, they're coming off of a huge win on the road at the Browns. This could be a spot where, they're maybe looking ahead, not very focused, potentially with this Texans team. But I mean, Davis Mills looked solid against New England. When they played that game a couple of weeks ago. That was obviously a flat spot for them. Last week, 29 for 43, 0 touchdowns, and he did have 2 picks. But I mean, I think the Texans, I mean, they're gonna try to throw the ball. They've pretty well proven that, and I think Mills is. I don't want to say he's improving weekly, but I think he has shown some improvement from that game against Carolina on Thursday Night Football a few weeks back. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for maybe a trap game this week, the Cardinals could be one. And from a parlay perspective, the Cardinals are a pretty dumb team to put in a parlay. It's not going to move the needle a whole lot as far as your odds go.
You know how many parlays that I saw with Buffalo, where people do those 10-team lottery ticket parlays, and somebody dropped it in one of the groups that I'm in on Twitter, and they're like, it was going into the Sunday night game, and they're like, oh, should I, ask in the group, should we cash out? And, I said, like, this Sunday night game with the Steelers and Seahawks and Geno Smith and, the Steelers offense sometimes can't get going. This could be a loss, or this Monday night game with Buffalo, Tennessee, that can be a loss. They didn't cash out. Let's just say that. And I think there was like over $10,000 at stake, or no, more than that.
Well,
the cash out was $8,000 going into Sunday night.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. And I was talking about this earlier on a show that I did. I had a buddy who put one of those, wild parlays together, and he just threw $5 on it. And, DraftKings was offering a $450 cash out on a, $635 potential win. And, I advised him prior to the game, you ought to cash this out. And, his response, well, it's only $5, I'll just let it ride. But, that's the thing with these sports books, and I've said it many times. If I were to walk up to this individual, or even the individual that you mentioned, and hand them $8,000 cash and tell them to click the cash out button, I think their answer would be a little bit different. But this is a number on a screen, and it's much different. It's easier to let things like that ride, and that is the advantage that the sports books have. The cash out feature is great, but there's a reason that it's there. It's not utilized by many, many people, or it would not be something that they're offering, I don't think. But I mean, if you can, especially in that case, I mean, at that point, and I don't know who this individual was, but $8,000 or $10,000. I mean, you start talking that kind of money, there's really not that big of a difference. Between having $8,000 and $10,000.
I think the overall hit was like a lot more than that, since they were offering 8 going into the Sunday night window.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. After they got home with the Steelers game, it would have been much higher. Yeah.
But I mean but you're talking about these trap games and how they can blow up your parlay. This Texan one, it does stick out a little bit, and plus 950 odds for the Texans to win this game.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely intriguing. And I mean, if you're putting together a wild parlay on, the FanDuel, you know, bet 20 to win 10 on a parlay, maybe you throw, or I say bet 20 to win 10, bet 20 to get $10 back in bonus cash. Maybe you throw the Texans in there. And, hey, I'm a big fan of, if you're doing parlays, try to kind of space those out. You get the noon window, get a couple games, and, you're heading into that last window with maybe the Texans left. You can cash it out prior to the start of the game, or, watch a little bit of it, then take the cash out. But yeah, I think there's some value on the Texans in this game for sure.
I have I pulled up the photo from Sunday night. So this was going into that Sunday night game. It was a $50 total wager, 11-leg parlay. The cash out was $8,024.30. The total win would have been $45,773.
Man.
It was plus 91,447 odds.
Yeah, that's that, like I said, that's the advantage the sports books have. It's a number on a page, and they're looking at that big payday, and you see it all the time. I'm not a fan of parlays at all, and it's I've done them before. We all have, but I'm sure in your experience, it always comes down to one team. One team always gets you, and that's what brings these people back. And really, the worst thing for an individual sports bettor, in my opinion, when it comes to parlays, is to hit something like that, because then it appears that it's easy, and you can really start to bet in over your head. I had a buddy last year that won about $4,000 on a same game parlay, and he rode that through the rest of the NFL season, and he was left standing with nothing at the end because he started betting these same game parlays for more than the $10 that he put to win the 4,000. So it's a losing proposition, and the sports books know that. So, I think that's just something to keep in mind when you're putting those parlays together, and especially if you've got a cash out option. I think you've got to always look to do that, and if you don't want to cash it out, or you're having issues cashing it out because, you really like that side, cash it out and, go bet on it. Take some of the money that you cashed out and put it on the other side. So,
as we begin to wind down, I want to ask one more game question to you, but I want to say, like, all the great tips that I've gotten that you and Alex and the other guys at OddsJam gives out, like, my number one tip to be a profitable sports bettor, you need to be disciplined on top of everything else.
100%. Absolutely. I've struggled the last couple of weeks in the NFL, and, I'll be the first to tell you and own up to it. But it takes discipline. There was that Seattle-Pittsburgh game. I lost on Sunday. I took a bad beat on the Patriots, as well as Carolina. They both go to overtime, and chance at a push with Carolina if they can hold them to 3. And I had 4 on the Patriots, and, they obviously scored a touchdown. And I was looking at that Sunday night game, and I wanted to pull the trigger. On Seattle, but my main reason for not was they were not on my list to start the day, and therefore there was no reason for them to be on my list, after a losing day, because I can definitely tell you, had I won last week in the NFL, I wouldn't even been looking to bet that game. So discipline is definitely something that is very key, and it's hard. I've struggled with it. I think everybody has as a sports bettor. You chase a little bit, but it takes discipline, and you've got to be able to handle losing. And you're going to lose.
Right.
If you're a 56%, against the spread bettor, I mean, you're going to lose 44% of the time. I mean, and that's a high number that just most people cannot. They can't handle. They can't handle losing 44% of the time, because that's very close to losing half the time. But yeah, discipline. You bring up a great point. It's absolutely necessary in this racket that we do. And a lot of people really struggle with the discipline side of things.
Now, before, what is your, let's end with this. What is your game? Do you have a game of the week or a lock of the week or a must bet of the week? Not player prop wise, but like on this week 7 slate on Sunday.
Yeah, so I mean, I've looked at the games. These last couple of weeks in the NFL have not been, matchup wise and just from a handicapping perspective, anything that I've really found a lot of value in. I will say I locked in the Bengals plus 7.5 earlier this week. It was a plus EV play. I think that this Ravens team. I know they're 5-1. I'm not sure that they're a 5-1 football team. I think that the Bengals are maybe a little bit better than given credit. They probably should have won that game against Green Bay. I mean, we missed 5 field goals down the stretch between the two teams. I mean, that was horrendous to watch. But I did take the Bengals plus the 7.5. I mentioned the Eagles earlier. I think that is a line that is almost begging you to take the Raiders. And then that's not a game where I can't take the Raiders in that spot. So I would lean to the Eagles. The Lions is interesting with the revenge, but I can't get behind them in that game. The Texans, is definitely one just in us talking, I think has a lot of potential value. And then looking at the Colts a little bit on the Sunday night game against the 49ers coming off the bye. The Colts are one of those teams that I can't really figure out this year.
Right.
They looked great against Houston. They blew the game against Baltimore. They could have won the game against the Rams. I mean, they've been so Jekyll and Hyde, and they looked horrible against Seattle in Week 1. But I think the Colts maybe have some value here. And I'm a Saints fan. Saints Seahawks Monday night. Looking forward to that game, but I don't really have an opinion on that one. As of now. But I would say if I had to pick a top play this week, I think the Bengals plus 7.5. It was minus 130 when I took it the other day. Would probably be my favorite play of the week this week.
Yeah, before I wrap up, Lamar Jackson has won his past 6 games against Cincinnati. Baltimore has covered the spread in each of the past 3, but before that, Cincinnati covered in their last 4 leading up to November 10th, 2019, and the under is 3-1 in the past 4 games. But I do think this is a different Bengals team. You talk about the Ravens are 5-1. Maybe they shouldn't be. I believe the Bengals should be 4-2. You can make the case that they had a letdown game against Chicago. That was a game that they should have won. I almost like Cincinnati outright in this game. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm drinking Cincinnati Kool-Aid. But I kind of have a little bit of a feeling on the Cincinnati Bengals. If they want to show everybody they're for real, it's this game.
I agree 100%. I think Cincinnati is very live in this game, and that's one thing in the NFL. If I'm looking to take a dog, I expect them to be able to win the game, and I do. I think Cincinnati absolutely can win this game. I think Jamar Chase can have a huge game against this Ravens secondary, and I think Joe Burrow's the real deal. I've been a fan of his, since he was at LSU and came into the league. And I just think that I think the Bengals team is a little bit undervalued. I think the 7 and the hook, is very valuable. And I think right now that line's 6.5. And, just to bring up another handicapping angle that I look for, 6.5 is a very popular teaser number. You've got to imagine the Ravens are going to be in a lot of teasers this week, to get them down to a pick 'em. And, teasers and parlays are 2 things that I like to avoid. Because that's what the public likes to bet. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think the Bengals are absolutely live in this game, and this is for first place in the division.
Absolutely,
this game is. So it's got a lot of meaning to it here in Week 7 of the NFL season.
All right, Randall, that's going to do it for today's show. Thanks a lot for coming on. Tell everybody once again where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Randall K Betts, and I'm also working with OddsJam on the side right now, and getting ready to transition into working with them full time. Take advantage of their website if you haven't checked it out, oddsjam.com. Again, betting tools for beginners, advanced sports bettors, professional sports bettors. It's all there, one place. Like I said, check it out.
Absolutely, guys. All right. If you make sure you go and check out the OddsJam YouTube page. Right now we're live on Twitter and Twitch, but this will be syndicated on YouTube, and this will also be on our podcast format. If you ever want to catch us out in the podcast format, just go to your podcast platform and search the Sports Betting Edge podcast. You could find us there. But that will do it for today. I'll be back later in the week talking some more NFL. But until then, have a good night.